Hi everybody, Jim Ostrowski. Try something new today. Gotta get a little bit more stylish on the podcast, a little whatever. Yeah, I just noticed it was the 15th anniversary of government schools are bad for your kids. I thought I'd talk about that because it seems like relevant. Trump's talking about getting rid of the Department of Education. And I think in the 15 years since I did publish the book, it's a prophetic book because so many of the things that have happened since that time have borne out what I said in the book. And I'm hoping to, I don't really do this very often, I'm hoping to read a couple of excerpts from the book because it's kind of startling how some of those predictions came true. But one of the things I want to point out is that the issue of government schools is game, set, match in the United States. I believe it was the big historical mistake. So if you divide American history into two sections, one 1776 through 1913, it's the libertarian era. Is it pure libertarian? No, don't give me any effing lectures. I know the history better than you do, but it was overall libertarian section of our history, and by libertarian I mean specifically, the government was small and largely stayed out of your business. Government spending was small. There wasn't much of a federal government. Start to get into the Interstate Commerce Commission. That's late in the era. But radical change comes in 1913. And from 1913 to the present, including the present, big time, we have the progressive big government era. So you divide those two eras. But what was the remarkable thing about the libertarian era is that government had very little to do with educating kids. They do start to bring in government schools in like 1840, but they started out mainly in grammar schools. And, well into the 19th century, most kids really weren't going to government school through high school as they do now. So it's interesting that era is typified by, more or less, predominance of liberty, not perfectly, many flaws, many exceptions, including slavery, obviously. Tremendous economic productivity, rising living standards. So 1913, a different model comes to the fore. And definitely, I got to run across the street here because somebody hit the button, which I normally don't hit. So during, I don't know the exact time when, well, I do. So when you combine government schools with the unionization of government school employees, and then you bring in the Federal Department of Education. So government control over education probably peaks around the time of the Department of Education, which Trump claims he's going to abolish. We'll see. And guess what? When did the United States start to decline? It's pretty obvious. It was and I lived through it. Many of you did not. I did, so I was there. I know what happened. But forget my opinion. The stagflation that comes in around 1974. That's why Hayek got the Nobel Prize, because they wanted to be the Keynesian model was overthrown. So not to get off on too many damn tangents, but the point I'm making is, so with the progressive era in 1913, government schools going full steam. A few decades after that, now we have now we're in decline. So in the first era, government schools, minimal involvement in society. The second era, and there was tremendous liberty and progress, economic progress. And then in the progressive era, we're in a stagnation decline mode for like most of my lifetime since I got out of high school. So this is the issue of government school, and it's explored in the book. I can't go through the whole book in a short podcast as I walk through the bike path. But the causal relationship between government schools and the decline and the stagnation and decline that we're in now, that's why Trump got elected, because people, they're just frustrated and they want something, they want some change. So what I'm trying to emphasize is government schools, it's game, set, match, people. We dodged a bullet against a really evil left progressive regime. But it doesn't mean we're out of the woods. The long-term trend is horrible. There are many reasons to think that Trump, although, look, let's be honest. The Biden administration was so horrible that there's no question that the Trump administration is going to be better, and I think it's going to be perceived to be better. But the question is, I said this morning, this is a point that's really important to understand. Reformers crowd out radicals. Reformers crowd out radicals. Look at Reagan. The system was collapsing again. Stagflation, foreign policy failures, high inflation, high unemployment, the debt from the Vietnam War, the debt from the failed Great Society. The system was in a mode of collapse in the 70s. And when things get desperate, that's when people look at the libertarians, because we actually have the answers to all these fucking problems. But then what happened? Amiable old Ronald Reagan comes along, and he tinkers around a little bit, keeps people happy, keeps the system going, fixes socialism security. I mean, the thing should just been allowed to fucking die. I mean, why do you think young people and middle-aged people are broke? Because they're paying Ronald Reagan's payroll tax. It's 14%, folks. 14%. I talked to, I used to, I don't anymore, because young people have gotten so dumb that you can't even talk to them anymore. Forgive me for stereotyping. Actually, it's called journalism. I'm reporting what I see. Not all young people, many young people are obviously smart. I'm talking about the trend over time. But I used to ask at the checkout line at the supermarket, did you know that a lot of the money that you make is not on your paycheck? the so-called employer's share, like the employer pays your Social Security. I'm being a little loud in the morning, hoping I'm not waking anybody up. The employer pays, quote, the quote employer pays, quote, their half of your social, like the person who hires you is running a charity. You should really give your employer a Christmas card in some chocolate every year. They're so nice to be donating that money to you. They're just so kind. I love these employers. Why do Marxists hate employers? They're paying all this Social Security money for you for free. That's such bullshit. It's your money. My point is, Reagan, the reformer always crowds out the radical. So the question, one way to look at Trump, is Trump Reagan 2? Is Trump Reagan 2, part 2? Is Trump going to be a radical, or is he going to be a reformer? If he's going to be a reformer, I'd wish he would, the collapsitarians make a lot more sense. It's better to have the system just collapse, because the system sucks, than have somebody come in and tinker around. And the other thing, I talk to people about Reagan, and they say, well, he made the country feel better. Well, Trump, unfortunately, made the country feel better about being a progressive big government country that swallows up 14% of your fucking wages before you even pay any of the other 50 tax. I don't want anybody to make the country feel better. I want the country to get better. I want the country to actually be an objective reality better, not just subjectively, emotionally feel better. So Trump talks about, I tried to pin this down this morning. I'm not even talking about the book. The great thing about the Liberty Moving podcast is you never know what I'm going to say, and I don't have a script. So Trump's talking about getting rid of the Department of Education. It's kind of slippery, though. I was trying to find, it wasn't really on his platform. He mentioned his kind of a couple of speeches. And what's kind of disturbing, he says, well, I'm going to move it to the states. Like, what does that mean? You're going to move it? Why would you move a piece of shit like the Department of Education anywhere? You know where you need to move the Department of Education? You need to flush it into the fucking toilet. Excuse my language. Oh, it's Saturday. I can swear. Try not to swear on Sundays anymore. So, I got a lot to say about this whole subject. So let's see if we can sort of integrate the various thoughts. So, the Department of Education is not the problem. This is, and again, I generally like Donald Trump. I think he's got many admirable qualities. But I gotta bust Trump's balls every once in a while. I'm not in his payroll. I don't work for Trump. I don't work for anybody. I work for the truth. So, the problem, for a long time, the Republicans have been convincing you that the problem is the Department of Education. It's not. I mean, yes, it's useless. It's a waste of money. There's a lot of bad stuff in there. It's a hotbed of leftist radicalism, and leftism is evil. Yeah, all that's true. But the states control education. The states control education. So when Trump says they're going to move it to the states, it's like, oh, that's not good. That government schools are bad for your kids. I mean, the states run them. So, the book itself, I only have, I don't know, I got so much material to cover. I have to, sometimes, the reason why I pause, I have to figure out how much material I can get into. So, I wrote the book, Government Schools Are Bad for Your Kids, basically because I realized at that time that was the key issue. The liberty movement had failed at that time, and we had to go in a different direction. And the book is, it's not a reform book. It's not a book there's nothing in the book that says, this is how you make these bad places better. In fact, the book explicitly argues, and this is why all the right-wing and conservative school reformers are full of bullshit. Do not follow them. They don't know what they're talking about. You can't reform these places. School choice. No, we don't want school fucking choice. We don't want vouchers. All that stuff is bullshit. We don't want charter schools. Just get the fucking government out of the education business. Because the government sucks at education, as it sucks at everything else. The government has no skill set that's relevant to education. In fact, as I prove in the book, there are so many subjects that children need to be taught where the government is incapable of education because the government is going to lie about these subjects. I mean, I've often asked, like, would this book ever be taught in a public high school, government high school? Can government teach free market economics? Is free market economics? There's no other type of economics. Economics, proper study of economics will lead to the conclusion that we need a free market. Okay, well, government schools are not a free market, right? Obviously, they're a form of socialism. And so, are you going to have a government school teach that economics in a way that implies that a student would raise his hand and say, well, geez, based on what you taught, shouldn't we close this school right now and lock it up, sell it, and all go home? Yeah, so government is incapable of teaching. So the approach that the book takes, and I'm trying to get again, I'm jumping around a lot because I try to integrate everything. I try to integrate all the different areas of thought and integrate it into what's happening now. I'm trying to get the Libertarian Party to shift sharply away from electoral politics, which it's failed in, obviously, and into direct action. And imagine if the Libertarian Party, currently with its significant resources, volunteer staff and energy. How you doing? So much for saying hello to people on the bike path. Imagine if they shifted into direct action. So I'm not reforming anything. I'm just saying the point of the book is get your kids out. Don't wait for anything. And that's the message of the book. So the book is organized in a very methodical way, and it's based on facts. There's a minimum of ideology in the book. So it's not like, oh, libertarians think this or that. No, it's really factual. It's kind of cold out here. I'm shifting my hands. So the first chapter is about crime. And by the way, there's a picture of Columbine shooters in there. So when these mass shootings happen, I always think, well, mass shootings happen in government schools because government schools kids are bullied. Often they go back. The Texas shooter went back to the damn same classroom where he was bullied. A lot of them are depressed and they're on psychotropic drugs. So this next chapter is about sex, and I'm talking about sex in and around the school premises, open promiscuous sex. So if that's what you want for your kids, send them to government school. Chapter 3, is the government school is the best drugstore around. And it goes on from there. I'm running out of park space, so I can't describe everything that's in the book. What I'm hoping to do, though, is read a couple of excerpts if I physically can do it. So I'll do that. But so if you're in a blue state, or a blue area, you want to pull your kids out of government schools. Both, and again, direct action has two aspects to it. One, it's good for you and your family because it increases liberty, it improves the quality of your life. But it also tends to move the country towards liberty because you're pulling your kids out. They're not going to be brainwashed anymore. And at some point, based on funding formulas, hopefully the schools will get less money and they'll have to fire some teachers and get those teachers. The same teacher who works in the private sector is going to have a different political view because now they're not consuming taxes, they're paying taxes, and they're going to join the resistance. So let me see. I wanted to. I was flipping through the book and reminding myself of what's in it. So there's one short chapter. I'm going to read a little bit of it as long as I can because it's hard to read, hold a selfie stick, and read from a book. But so chapter 8, because a lot of people say, well, yeah, you're right, but I can't afford it. I can't afford it. So chapter 8 is called "You Get What You Pay For." I'm going to try to read this whole thing if I can. I get enough sunlight here. Government schools are free, but in the end, you get what you pay for. And you pay for more than you get. Sadly, many families will already have paid these bills before high school graduation day. Many thousands for child support, chapter 2. Several thousand, that has to do with teen pregnancies and so on. Several thousand for drug treatment, chapter 3. Thousands for medical bills for an assault on your child, chapter 1. Assuming you emerge financially unscathed from K through 12, you may nevertheless lose a bundle upon high school graduation by being deprived of the college scholarship money, more likely to go to private school graduates. That shortfall will, of course, have to be made up by you for your child. College could easily cost well over $100,000. The first big bill you pay for sending your child to a free government school may be when you find out that your son or daughter is not getting any college scholarship money. It may take many years to pay off the debts, pay off the extra costs created by the scholarship gap. The bad news doesn't end there. with the college tuition bill. The evidence is clear. Government school attendees lag behind private school graduates in college performance and career earnings. I'm going to omit that quote so I can, long quote from an academic study. I think you get the general idea here. One of the things, I don't know if I mentioned in this chapter or not, is if your kid gets into criminal trouble, now you got to hire a lawyer. Well, that's much more likely for a government school kid, and I know this because I'm a criminal defense lawyer, to run into those problems. Lifetime earnings, I'll just summarize. Lifetime earnings for college degree, much higher. I know things have changed a little bit, but I think the long-term statistics are still valid. Only 70% of high school graduates actually graduate, and only 32% are qualified to attend a four-year college. Skipping over a long quote here, the point I'm making is this book really contains all of the arguments needed to persuade you that this is a losing proposition. Even the weakest argument, the weakest point in my argument is I can't afford it, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you look at the long-term costs, you can't afford not to get your kids out of these horrible places. So there is strong evidence that private schools are superior in government schools, even when their students come from the same backgrounds. Studies show that voucher recipients consistently outperform peers who applied for the same vouchers but who were not randomly selected and thus remained in public schools. So, final quick paragraph here. If your children emerge from school unprepared for life, it will come back to haunt you. It turns out that when you take a closer look, free government schools turn out to be quite expensive. Can you afford them? Let me get in one more quick excerpt here, because I thought this was pretty interesting from just looking at the book this morning. 2 short paragraphs, and then I'll try to sum up. Consider that in a nation formed out of, this is 15 years ago, out of rebellion against uniformed troops of the most powerful state on earth, most Americans now easily take orders, no questions asked, from anyone with a badge. We now line up passively at courthouses and airports and submit to body searches and examination of the contents of purses. This is all pre-lockdown. Isn't that interesting? We take little note when the federal government pays for the installation of high-tech video surveillance equipment in our neighborhoods. Few of us think to protest roadblocks, where all persons in cars are stopped and searched, even though the Fourth Amendment was designed to prohibit just such generalized searches without probable cause. We wonder why the peoples of totalitarian countries didn't resist in the early stages of their various dictatorships' rise to power. Of course, if you wait till the later stages of totalitarianism to resist, it is usually too late. It is because they got, thanks, I got construction noise, beautiful. It is because they got into the habit of mindlessly following whatever orders the government issues in government school classrooms for 12 fucking years. Just like we do now in the United States. This was 15 years before the lockdown, folks. Well, 12 years. Sadly, people are trained to obey government employees without question in government schools from ages 5 through 18 will be exceedingly unlikely to change that habit in later years. Folks, it's game, set, match. It's highly unlikely that anything Trump is going to do is going to change the situation with regard to education. Because it's not the federal Department of Education. It's the states, It's the states that control. It's the states that control education. And the odds of any reform happening at the state level, because there's so many reformers on the right wing and conservative, they're not radicals. Reformers crowd out radicals. Feel-good people keep the system going. We need to feel bad about the system, so we'll change it and look at, as Milton Friedman said, a radical is someone who goes to the root. A radical is not somebody who throws a bomb. A radical is just somebody who's peeled the onion further than the reformers have. I don't want to keep this system going. I want to change this rotten system so we can have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is the whole point. So let me close on one note. There's a companion book to government schools. By the way, it's on audio and Kindle. No excuse. And I looked at, by the way, I actually looked at my sales figures. I don't talk too much about the sales figures. I have sold well over 10,000 books, which is amazing for somebody who has like essentially zero support from anybody in society except for 5 or 6 people I can rattle off, and I'm ever grateful for their support. But I looked up all the time this book has been out there. I sold 734 copies. And how many phony books how many phony reform type books or feel good books, people have pissed away so much money in the failed conservative movement. The conservative movement has failed since 1964. Read Progressivism a Primer. I've sold 734 lousy books on Amazon for something that was basically prophesied everything that's happening now in the government schools, as you well know. And, sure, I've sold some, probably a couple hundred more, but 1,000 books? There's 50 million Americans who send their kids to these horrible places. And 1,000 of them have read my book? It's fucking depressing. It really is. But there's a companion book, which is called Free the Children. And what's the point of that book? Well, the point of that book is to point out what the Republican Party does not want you to know. And even Donald Trump has not told you. In states controlled by the Republican Party, which is supposedly the anti-big government, anti-socialism, pro-school choice, lower taxes. You know what taxes, in New York State, your property tax is 60% government schools. But in those red states, which used to be 22, 23, and I haven't checked the results of the election, but with the red wave, maybe we've got 24, I don't know. But in 24 states, the Republican Party, if it wasn't a big fraud scheme, could abolish government schools tomorrow. Why don't they? Why don't they? That's the book, Free the Children. But whether you're in a red state or a blue state, pull your kids out of these horrible places. This is the issue. I'm asking the Libertarian Party to shift resources into this. We can figure out the details, how to do it. Just trying to get the message out there that's not gotten out there. These places are bad for your kids for many, 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 many reasons. They are bad for the country because government schools are the infrastructure of progressive big government. And yeah, we dodged a bullet. Young people actually voted for Trump in greater margins. But they put Biden in there, the vote of young people put Biden in there. That's a fact. And you have 4 wrecked years. Inflation, lives shattered, lockdown. A lot of our kids had to go through the lockdown. I'm not going to get personal here. 1 million dead Ukrainians. Slaughter in Gaza. All on Biden's watch. And that's young people who did that. Check the stats. So I know I've jumped around a lot. I jump around a lot because you got to jump around a lot to integrate everything so that people understand what the hell is going on. So that's all I have to say about that. Check out Government Schools Are Bad for Your Kids. It's a very short, easy read. And I think the arguments will astonish you, quite frankly. So have a great day, everybody. Like Sherlock Holmes, I'm always on the case.